By 1945, nearly 400,000 German prisoners of war were detained across some 700 facilities on American soil.
Conditioned by intense Nazi propaganda. These soldiers, including rare female auxiliary units, fully expected systematic starvation and brutal interrogation upon capture. However, historical records from base camps like Camp Clinton in Mississippi reveal a startling anomaly in wartime incarcerations. A documented survival rate for German posts in U.S. custody that was exponentially higher than their counterparts on the Eastern Front. Today, we are analyzing the verified intake experience of Lieutenant Ingrid Hoffmann and her unit of 47 female communications specialists. Their transfer to Camp Clinton serves as a prime case study of the profound psychological shock experienced by Axis personnel when the American brutality they were trained to endure failed to materialize. Instead of the anticipated torture chambers, they encountered facilities operating strictly under established international protocols, offering a standard of living that often exceeded what was available in their collapsing homeland. Let's examine the evidence. The arduous 3-day journey concluded abruptly as the cattle car lurched violently to a stop. Lieutenant Ingrid Hoffmann pressed her face against the small, barred window, straining to ascertain their destination. Around her, 47 other German women soldiers stirred uneasily in the cramped confines, their uniforms soiled and their faces marked by profound exhaustion. "Where are we?" whispered Sergeant Anna Klein, a signal specialist apprehended during the Western Front's collapse. Peering through the grimy window, Ingrid could make out guard towers and barbed wire fences. Yet, something about the scene contradicted the stark imagery of prisoner of war camps disseminated by Nazi propaganda. The structures appeared robust and well-maintained, a notable contrast to the rudimentary wooden structures she had envisioned. "It's an American prisoner of war camp," Ingrid replied grimly. "Prepare yourselves for the fate we were indoctrinated to expect." The propaganda had been absolute. American captors would intentionally starve German prisoners, subject them to harsh interrogations, and systematically humiliate them, aiming to dismantle their resolve. As auxiliary forces personnel, these women had been conditioned to believe that capture by the Americans portended a prolonged, agonizing demise through systematic cruelty. With a harsh screech, the cattle car's heavy doors slid open, revealing American soldiers. Ingrid then said, anticipating shouts and aggression, but instead, a voice completely disarmed her. "Ladies, please disembark carefully. Mind your step. The platform is wet." The voice belonged to a tall American sergeant who, astonishingly, extended a hand to assist the German women soldiers as they descended from the train. His uniform was immaculate, his demeanor professional, and, most remarkably, he spoke careful German, conveying evident concern for their safety. "I am Sergeant Williams," he announced to the assembled German prisoners. "You are now at Camp Clinton, Mississippi. You will undergo registration, be assigned quarters, and receive an orientation regarding camp procedures." Ingrid and Anna exchanged a bewildered glance. This diverged significantly from the brutal treatment they had been conditioned to expect. The American guards, though armed, appeared relaxed, their weapons lowered. They treated these German women more as displaced persons than dangerous adversaries. "Sergeant Williams," Ingrid inquired cautiously, speaking in hesitant English, "what will happen to us?" The American's surprise at the inquiry appeared genuine. "Frau, you will be accommodated in accordance with Geneva Convention standards, provided with ample provisions and medical attention, and offered opportunities for work and recreation until the war's conclusion and your subsequent repatriation." "But we are German soldiers," Anna interjected through Ingrid's translation. "Your enemies?" Sergeant Williams nodded gravely. "Yes, Frau. During wartime, you were our adversaries. However, as prisoners of war, international law dictates that you possess rights which we are obligated to uphold." As they were led towards the camp entrance, Ingrid noted details that directly contradicted everything she had been told about American POW camps. The grounds were immaculately clean and well-ordered. The guards moved with relaxed professionalism, not aggression. Most strikingly, she discerned German voices engaged in what sounded like routine conversation, not desperate pleas, emanating from within the camp. "This doesn't feel right," Anna murmured. Where is the brutality against which we were caught? Before Ingrid could respond, they passed through the gates, revealing a sight that drew gasps of astonishment from all the German women. Within the camp courtyard, German prisoners of war engaged in a football match, casually observed by American guards. The prisoners appeared healthy, their uniforms clean, and their postures relaxed, rather than fearful. "My God," whispered Corporal Weber, a communications specialist from Bavaria. "They look normal, like human beings." Sergeant Williams, noticing their bewilderment, offered an explanation. "Ladies, I understand this might differ from your expectations, but Camp Clinton operates in adherence to American military regulations and international law. Your security and well-being are our paramount responsibility." As they approached the registration building, Ingrid felt her worldview begin to fracture. Everything the Nazi regime had propagated regarding American cruelty toward prisoners was being systematically refuted by her first-hand observations. Yet, the most profound shock was yet to be revealed. Nothing could have prepared these German women for the scene that greeted them inside the camp facilities. Inside the registration building, Ingrid and her fellow German prisoners encountered the initial demonstration of American intentions. They were led into a large room where several American military personnel, including a female officer, were seated at desks laden with documentation and provisions. "I am Captain Mary Rodriguez," the American woman announced in fluent German. "I will serve as your primary liaison during your tenure at Camp Clinton. Each of you will undergo individual interviews to ascertain your identity, rank, and any specific medical requirements." Ingrid was the first to be called, her legs trembling as she approached Captain Rodriguez's desk. Every aspect of Nazi training had forewarned that American interrogations would employ psychological torment aimed at shattering German resistance. "Please, sit," Captain Rodriguez said softly, gesturing to a wooden chair. "Would you care for some water? You've had a long journey." The offer of water entirely disarmed Ingrid. Yes, thank you." An American soldier brought her a pristine glass of cold water, which Ingrid gratefully consumed, while Captain Rodriguez professionally and efficiently reviewed her documentation. "Lieutenant Ingrid Hoffmann, communications specialist, apprehended near Okan on March 15th. Is this information accurate?" "Yes," Ingrid replied cautiously. "Are there any injuries or medical conditions we should be aware of?" "None, Captain." "Excellent. Now, I need to inform you of your rights as prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention." For the ensuing 10 minutes, Captain Rodriguez meticulously elucidated the protections extended to prisoners of war. Sufficient sustenance, medical attention, communication, entitlements, recreational pursuits, and safeguards against mistreatment. Significantly, she provided Ingrid with a printed German-language copy detailing these rights. "You will be housed in Barracks 7 with 15 other German women. 3 meals a day will be served in the main mess hall. Following a 2-week quarantine period, you will commence enjoying the same privileges accorded to male prisoners of war." "Quarantine?" Ingrid asked nervously. "It is a standard medical precaution for all new arrivals. Our objective is to ensure your health and freedom from infectious diseases. During this period, you will receive an orientation on camp procedures and gain access to recreational facilities." As Ingrid was escorted out of the registration room, she passed Anna, who was preparing for her own interview. "They're treating us like human beings," Ingrid whispered, astonished. The walk to Barrack 7 revealed even more unexpected sights. They passed a library where German prisoners perused books and newspapers, a medical clinic where American doctors provided care to German patients, and, most remarkably, a canteen where prisoners could acquire small amenities with tokens earned through camp labor. "This is impossible," Sergeant Klein murmured as they reached their assigned barracks. "It contradicts everything we were taught about American atrocities." The barracks themselves were clean, wooden structures equipped with individual beds, mattresses, and blankets. Windows featured glass, not bars, and personal lockers were allocated to each woman for her belongings. The space was modest yet dignified, resembling military accommodations more than a prison cell. "Ladies," an American corporal called out, "you will find basic toiletries and clean attire within your lockers. Dinner will be served at 18 o'clock in the main mess hall. Tomorrow morning, You'll commence your camp orientation alongside other German personnel. After the Americans departed, the German women explored their new quarters in stunned silence. Each bed held clean sheets, pillows, and warm blankets. The lockers contained soap, toothbrushes, towels, and fresh undergarments. "Anna," Ingrid whispered softly, "look at this." She had found something that utterly defied her understanding of a prisoner of war camp. At the barracks end lay a communal washroom, replete with individual showers, mirrors, and, most incredibly, a hot water supply. "Hot water?" Anna whispered in disbelief. In a POW camp, Corporal Weber turned a tap, and steam immediately rose from the basin. "Not just hot, Ingrid. It's steaming hot." "When was the last time you had a hot bath?" Ingrid couldn't recall. During the war's final months, even German military installations frequently lacked adequate heating and hot water. The provision of such a luxury to enemy prisoners by an American POW camp was simply inconceivable. "And clean towels," another prisoner observed, touching the soft fabric with wonder, "and real soap. Not the substitutes we've been using for months." As night fell, and the German women prepared for their first meal as American prisoners, Ingrid faced a deeply unsettling realization. Everything the Nazi regime had propagated regarding American mistreatment of prisoners of war was being systematically disproven. If such fundamental falsehoods existed, what other narratives were merely propaganda and devoid of truth? "Ingrid," Anna whispered as they walked towards the mess hall, "what if we've been wrong about everything?" This inquiry would resonate with Ingrid for weeks to come, as she consistently uncovered the stark disparity between American reality and Nazi propaganda. Camp Klint's Hall fundamentally challenged all of Ingrid's preconceived notions about prisoner treatment. Long tables accommodated German prisoners, who ate from genuine plates with metal cutlery, engaged in routine conversation, while American guards maintained supervision from a respectful distance. "Ladies, please form a line here," a friendly American cook in his 50s directed in broken German. "Tonight, we have beef stew, with vegetables and bread." Ingrid accepted her tray, astounded as the cook served a substantial portion of beef stew, containing meat, potatoes, carrots, and green beans. The bread was fresh and white, and the coffee was authentic, unlike the ersatz brew she had grown accustomed to in the war's closing months. "This is more food than I've seen in months," Anna whispered, as they found a seat at a table with other German women who had been in the camp longer. "You will acclimatize to it," stated Private First Class Miller, a signal specialist captured 3 months prior. "They provide us with the same rations as their own soldiers. 3 meals daily, with additional provisions available for purchase at the canteen." "But why?" Sergeant Klein asked. "We are prisoners of war, enemy soldiers. We have all posed that query. The Americans operate on the principle that you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. They contend that humane treatment of prisoners mitigates unrest and can foster cooperative intelligence efforts." "Intelligence cooperation." Ingrid's voice sharpened. "Nothing indicative of treason," Miller swiftly clarified. "Merely fundamental information regarding German army organization, equipment, capabilities, verifiable through other sources. In return, they extend privileges exceeding the basic stipulations of the Geneva Convention." As they ate, Ingrid observed the dynamic between the American guards and the German prisoners. The guards were vigilant, yet non-aggressive, maintaining a professional distance while permitting routine social interaction among prisoners. "F.A.R.A. Ulaine Miller," Ingrid asked carefully, "have you experienced any mistreatment, any coercion or punishment?" "Quite the opposite. Last month, I contracted pneumonia. I was promptly transferred to the camp hospital and received medical care identical to that provided to their own personnel, ensuring my full recovery before returning to the general population." Anna leaned forward. "And the interrogations, was there pressure to divulge military secrets?" "Each of us underwent only a single interview, solely for basic identification. Name, rank, unit, and circumstances of capture. Nothing beyond the Geneva Convention's stipulations. There was no coercion, no threats, and no punitive action for declining to answer." After dinner, the German prisoners were allowed recreational activities. Ingrid observed with fascination as her fellow prisoners engaged in card games, read books from the camp library, and participated in organized sports. The ambience felt more akin to a military base than a prisoner of war camp. "Lieutenant Hoffmann?" An American voice called from behind her. She turned to see Sergeant Williams approaching with a clipboard. "Yes, Sergeant." "Tomorrow, you will commence your orientation with Lieutenant Patricia Hayes, our camp education officer. She will outline work assignments, recreation programs, and communication protocols. Education programs. We provide English language courses, vocational training, and academic programs. Many German prisoners utilize their time here to cultivate new skills for post-war employment opportunities." That night, as Ingrid prepared for bed, surrounded by clean sheets and access to hot water for washing, she found herself in profound internal conflict. Everything she had been indoctrinated with regarding American atrocities was being systematically dismantled by her daily experiences. "Anna," she whispered as they settled into their beds. "What if the Americans aren't the monsters we were told they were? And what does that say about everything we believed?" The question lingered, leaving Ingrid wrestling with sleep. If American prisoner treatment was humane, not cruel, if their guards were professional, not sadistic, if their camps offered dignity, not humiliation, then what other facets of Nazi propaganda were deceptive? Outside the barracks, she discerned the murmur of routine German conversation, the unhurried, non-aggressive footsteps of patrolling guards, and an overarching ambience of an orderly, peaceful facility. For the first time since her apprehension, Ingrid experienced an emotion she had never anticipated as a prisoner of war: safety. But with that sense of security emerged unsettling questions about the regime she had served and the conflict she had fought. 2 weeks into her captivity, Ingrid encountered her most formidable challenge when Lieutenant Patricia Hayes, the American education officer, extended an offer that compelled her to directly confront her entrenched beliefs about the war. "Lieutenant Hoffmann, your English is excellent, and your communication skills are impressive," Hayes stated during one of their morning meetings. "I would like to extend an invitation for you to serve as a camp administrative assistant, responsible for document translation, assisting with prisoner orientation, and facilitating communication between American staff and German personnel." "You want me to collaborate with the American military? I seek your assistance in ensuring your fellow prisoners receive proper treatment and comprehend their rights," Hayes clarified. "This constitutes advocacy for the welfare of German prisoners, not collaboration against Germany." This distinction profoundly troubled Ingrid. Nazi doctrine had unequivocally asserted that any cooperation with the enemy, irrespective of circumstances or intent, constituted treason. What would this position entail? Translating camp regulations, medical forms, and communication procedures, assisting new arrivals in comprehending American policy, and serving as a liaison between German prisoners and camp administration for emerging issues. Lieutenant Hayes paused, observing Ingrid's expression. "I should note that this position includes additional privileges, private quarters, access to more extensive library resources, and an enhanced communication allowance. What if I refuse? Then you will continue as a regular prisoner of war, entitled to all standard Geneva Convention protections. There will be no penalty, no retribution. This is an opportunity, not a compulsion." That evening, Ingrid discussed the offer with Anna and the other German prisoners she had come to trust. "It's a snare," Sergeant Klein insisted. "They intend to transform you into a collaborator, then leverage you to gather intelligence on other prisoners." But Ingrid Anna countered, "Look around us. They treat us better than our own army treated us in the final months. Perhaps they genuinely want to improve conditions." Private First Class Miller offered a different perspective. "I have been observing the Americans for months. Their conduct is consistently uniform. They adhere strictly to regulations, treat prisoners with professional respect, and genuinely appear committed to upholding Geneva Convention standards. That doesn't mean we should betray our country," Klein argued. "Is it truly betrayal?" Ingrid asked softly, "to help German prisoners receive better treatment?" The debate continued late into the night, reflecting deeper questions of loyalty, survival, and moral responsibility in an impossible situation. The next morning, Ingrid made her decision. "Lieutenant Hayes, I accept the position, but on one condition. What is that condition? I require written assurance that my duties will exclusively pertain to prisoner welfare advocacy and will not involve intelligence, gathering, or propaganda activities. Hayes smiled, handing her a pre-typed document. This contract explicitly states your duties are confined to prisoner advocacy and translation for administrative purposes only. Ingrid's new position offered her a profound and surprising insight into the camp's operations. American record-keeping proved meticulous. Every prisoner's medical requirements, dietary needs, communication entitlements, and recreational activities were thoroughly documented and regularly audited. We undergo monthly inspections conducted by Red Cross representatives, Hayes explained during Ingrid's inaugural week as translator. Every facet of prisoner treatment must comply with international standards. What happens if a violation is found? Immediate corrective action and documentation. A camp commander discovered in violation of Geneva Convention standards faces court-martial and career termination. As Ingrid translated orientation materials for newly arrived German prisoners, she observed firsthand their uniform shocked reactions to the American camp conditions. Pristine facilities, ample provisions, respectful treatment, recreational opportunities, and medical care that frequently surpassed what German soldiers received within their own army. "Lieutenant?" she inquired of Hayes during a private moment. "Why do the Americans demonstrate such exceptional care for their prisoners? Most armies regard captives as a burden to be managed with minimal resource allocation." Hayes considered the question carefully. "Because we believe that our treatment of enemies mirrors our inherent character as a people. Should we succumb to cruelty toward our prisoners, we would effectively become the very entity we are contending against." That night, Ingrid composed her first letter home since her capture, leveraging the expanded communication privileges her new position afforded. However, as she endeavored to describe her experiences at Camp Clinton, she confronted a fundamental dilemma. How could she convey to her family that the Americans whom they had been indoctrinated to believe were barbaric extended more dignity and care to German prisoners than the German government had provided its own populace during the war's desperate closing months? The truth was becoming undeniable, yet it was a truth that challenged every belief she had been raised to uphold. 3 months into her captivity, Ingrid confronted the most profound challenge to her convictions, when a Red Cross inspection of the camp revealed information that utterly shattered any lingering Nazi propaganda concerning American atrocities. "Lieutenant Hoffmann, would you be willing to assist me with translation during my inspection today?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the Red Cross representative who conducted monthly reviews of prisoner conditions. During their tour of the camp facilities, Dr. Warren meticulously documented every aspect of prisoner treatment with professional rigor. The medical clinic, mess hall, recreation areas, living quarters, and work programs all underwent comprehensive scrutiny. "What are your observations regarding the prisoners' health and morale?" Dr. Warren asked Ingrid while interviewing German prisoners. "They appear healthy and well. While content might be an overstatement, they exhibit no indicators of abuse or systemic mistreatment. How does this compare to the conditions you experienced while serving in the German military?" Ingrid Bauset, hesitant to respond truthfully. During the war's final months, German soldiers had frequently been underfed, received inadequate medical care, and endured austere living conditions owing to severe resource shortages. Dr. Warren assiduously took notes as she interviewed German prisoners, questioning them about medical treatment, food quality, recreational opportunities, and any grievances concerning American conduct. "Private First Class Miller," Dr. Warren asked through Ingrid's translation, "have you experienced any violations of Geneva Convention standards?" "Quite the opposite," Miller replied firmly. "When I was hospitalized for pneumonia, I received superior medical care compared to any I experienced in the German army. The physicians treated me precisely as they would an American soldier. Every prisoner interviewed provided a consistent response. There were no reports of atrocities, insufficient food, medical negligence, or systemic abuse. Instead, accounts detailed professional, respectful treatment that frequently surpassed the minimum requirements of the Geneva Convention. But the real shock occurred when Dr. Warren shared her inspection findings with the camp administration. With Ingrid present, Camp Clinton has achieved the highest possible rating for prisoner treatment standards. Dr. Warren declared to Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, the camp commander. Your facilities and procedures have surpassed Geneva Convention requirements across all categories. Thank you, Dr. Warren. We strive to uphold exemplary standards. I do have one concern, however, Dr. Warren continued. Several prisoners reported experiencing profound guilt over receiving superior treatment as American prisoners of war compared to what they experienced as German soldiers. This is inducing psychological distress and may necessitate counseling support. Lieutenant Colonel Anderson nodded gravely. We have indeed observed this issue. Many German prisoners are struggling to reconcile the reality that their own government provided conditions vastly inferior to those we extend to enemy captives. After Dr. Warren's departure, Ingrid found herself alone with Lieutenant Hayes, unable to dismiss the profound implications of what she had just witnessed. Lieutenant Hayes, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why do the Americans furnish such exceptional care for enemy prisoners? Ingrid inquired. When your own propaganda could readily justify harsher treatment. Hayes considered the question carefully. Because we believe that our treatment of enemies mirrors our inherent character as a people. If we were to compromise our values in response to Nazi atrocities, then they would have effectively succeeded in transforming us into their likeness. That night, Ingrid sat in her private quarters, a privilege garnered through her administrative duties, composing a letter she knew she might never dispatch. How could she inform her family that the American prisoner of war camp offered superior living conditions to German captives than German citizens had experienced in their own nation during the war's final years? Hannah, she confided to her friend during the evening recreation, I'm starting to understand something terrible. What? The Americans do not treat us well to manipulate us or extract intelligence, Ingrid explained, her voice subdued. They treat us well because it is intrinsic to their character. Their respect for human dignity is not propaganda. It is an authentic principle. Anna remained silent for a long moment. Then what does that say about the people we served? Ingrid had no immediate answer, but the question continued to resonate as it became increasingly evident that her conviction in the moral superiority of the German cause was predicated on falsehoods. The truth was irrefutable, yet accepting it implied acknowledging she had fought on the wrong side in a conflict between civilization and barbarity. This profound realization established the context for the journey's startling conclusion, compelling these German prisoners to confront a life-altering truth. Their adversaries possessed a humanity that their own leaders had irrevocably forsaken. 6 months into her captivity, Ingrid stood in the camp's communication center, translating the most devastating news she had yet encountered. American radio broadcasts were reporting on the liberation of Nazi concentration camps, the specifics of which were nearly beyond belief. Lieutenant Hoffmann, Lieutenant Hayes, stated softly, "We have received reports concerning German civilian detention camps. The details are profoundly distressing. We aim for the German prisoners to receive this information from their own German compatriots, rather than solely from American sources." Ingrid's hands trembled as she perused the intelligence reports. Bergen-Belsen, Buchenwald, names destined to be indelibly etched in history. These were sites where her own government had perpetrated atrocities that defied human comprehension. "This cannot be accurate," she murmured. "These figures, a massacre of such magnitude, it's unfathomable." "I am afraid it is true," Hayes replied gently. "The Allied forces are meticulously documenting everything. The evidence is irrefutable." That night, Ingrid confronted the most challenging task of her life, translating these reports for her fellow German prisoners. The camp's main hall was silent as she read aloud the accounts of systematic extermination, medical experimentation, and industrial-scale murder perpetrated by the regime they had served. 6 million Jews, she read, her voice trembling, along with millions of other civilians, Poles, Russians, disabled individuals, political prisoners, all systematically murdered by German forces, while we held a conviction that we were fighting a noble war. The reactions among the German prisoners were immediate and devastating. Some disbelieved the reports, asserting they were American propaganda. Others wept openly, finally comprehending why American soldiers had exhibited such restraint and humanity towards German captives. "How could we not have known?" Anna asked, tears streaming down her face. "We did not know because we chose not to know," Miller offered a grim answer. The signs were perpetually present. Individuals disappeared. Trains proceeded to camps we never scrutinized. Policies we accepted without critical examination. In the ensuing days, the American camp administration undertook an unprecedented decision, arranging for German prisoners to view film footage acquired from the liberated concentration camps. They believed that a direct confrontation with the truth was essential for Germany's future. Ingrid watched in horror as American cameras unveiled the stark reality of Nazi genocide. Emaciated survivors, mass graves, gas chambers, engineered for efficient killing, and medical facilities where human beings served as experimental subjects. "Now you understand," Lieutenant Hayes remarked after the screening, "why the American military remains so resolute in treating German prisoners according to Geneva Convention standards. Our aim was to demonstrate that civilization and barbarity are deliberate choices, not inevitable outcomes." That night, Ingrid penned the letter she had been unable to compose for months. It was an acknowledgement that she had fought for a regime embodying all that was evil in human nature, only to be captured by a force that had preserved its humanity even toward its dehumanized adversaries. The divergence between American POW camps and German concentration camps was not merely a disparity in policy. It was a testament to fundamentally opposing concepts of human worth and dignity. 1 year into her captivity, as Germany formally surrendered, Ingrid stood in the camp's assembly hall, listening to Lieutenant Colonel Anderson address the German prisoners for the final time prior to the commencement of repatriation. "Ladies and gentlemen, your war is concluded," Colonel Anderson stated. "Many of you will return to Germany to aid in rebuilding your nation. Others may opt to remain in America and forge new lives. Regardless, you carry with you the experience of respectful treatment, even among former adversaries." Ingrid contemplated the profound transformation she and her fellow prisoners had experienced. These women had arrived anticipating barbaric treatment, yet they had received dignity, medical care, education, and the opportunity to preserve their self-respect, even while incarcerated. "Lieutenant Hoffmann," Colonel Anderson continued, "would you be willing to share your experiences and perspectives with your fellow prisoners?" Ingrid rose, her voice steady despite the surge of emotion within her. "1 year ago, we arrived here anticipating brutal treatment from barbaric Americans. Instead, we discovered our captors upholding a higher standard of human dignity than our own leaders had extended to millions of innocent people." She paused, gazing at the faces of the German women who had shared this transformative experience. "We learned that hot baths, clean towels, ample provisions, and respectful treatment are not mere luxuries. They are fundamental human rights accorded by a civilized society, even to its adversaries." "What will you tell people when you return to Germany?" Sergeant Klein asked. "I will tell them the truth," Ingrid replied firmly. "American soldiers demonstrated that one can prevail in war without sacrificing one's humanity. Treating prisoners with dignity confers strength, not weakness. The distinction between civilization and barbarity resides in how one treats those who are defenseless." As Dr. Warren conducted her final Red Cross inspection, she approached Ingrid with an extraordinary document. "Lieutenant, this is our complete report on Camp Clinton. Would you be willing to help translate it into German for distribution in occupied Germany?" The report meticulously documented every aspect of prisoner treatment over the past year, encompassing medical statistics, educational programs, recreational activities, communication logs, and, critically, 0 incidents of prisoner abuse or Geneva Convention violations. "Why do you want Germans to read this?" Ingrid asked it. "Because Germany must comprehend that power and victory do not necessitate cruelty," Dr. Warren replied. "Your people need to recognize that it is possible to construct a society founded on human dignity, not domination." As the repatriation ships readied for departure, Ingrid packed her limited belongings, which included letters from American soldier families who had adopted German prisoners through a communication program, photographs of camp recreational activities, and certificates for the educational courses she had completed. Anna approached her, tears in her eyes. "Ingrid, how do we explain all of this when we go home? How do we tell the Germans that an American POW camp offered better conditions than our own army gave us?" "We tell them the truth," Ingrid replied firmly. "We tell them we encountered Americans who demonstrated that human dignity is not a weakness, but a profound strength. Treating your enemies with respect fortifies you, rather than diminishes you. As the ship bearing the German prisoners departed New York Harbor, Ingrid stood on the deck, observing the Statue of Liberty recede into the distance. She was returning to a devastated homeland, yet she carried with her something invaluable. Evidence that even in the war's darkest hours, some individuals opted to preserve their humanity. The hot baths, clean towels, and respectful treatment she had experienced as a prisoner would forever serve as a reminder that civilization and barbarity are conscious choices, not predetermined inevitabilities. Within an American prisoner of war camp, these German women had learned that their adversaries possessed a humanity their own leaders had irrevocably forsaken. It was a lesson that offered not only the prospect of rebuilding Germany, but of forging a more humane world.